The fleet dropped out of hyperspace with all the arrogance of conquerors who had never faced loss. 12 dreadnoughts, 3 planet crackers, and a vanguard of scout ships hovered in Earth's orbit like sharks circling still water. They expected awe, they expected fear. What they got was silence. Initial scans confused the Zora Central Command. Massive cities bloomed across the continents, sprawling constructs of steel, glass, and chaotic electromagnetic noise. Yet no planetary shield, no beacons, no interstellar comms. Earth was active but disconnected from the galactic mesh. It was as if it had grown in isolation, blind and feral. They broadcast a standard planetary assertion. No answer. They tried. A focused hailing sequence in over 50 dialects, including Terran Primal. Still nothing. Static. Then a transmission. Brief, raw, human. You're not welcome here. The voice was unprocessed. No protocol. Just unfiltered words saturated with venom and calm, spoken in flawless English. The Zorath admiral dismissed it as a primitive scare tactic and dispatched the first scout team. 5 soldiers, 1 linguist, and 2 biosentinels descended in a sleek dropship. They targeted a settlement identified by satellites, a population cluster with minimal defenses, oddly arranged around roadways and rectangles. Minutes after landing, their feed cut out. No alarms, no screaming, no weapons fire. The dropships. Signal vanished as if it had never existed. The last moment captured. A soldier turning his head sharply, eyes wide, mouthing something, then black. The fleet waited, puzzled. They sent drones. The drones failed mid-air. Mechanical systems scrambled, heat sensors blinded. One captured only 4 seconds of data before self-destructing, a single image of an empty street, windows lit, and 1,000 humans standing perfectly still, staring skyward. The admiral grew annoyed. He dispatched a second team, heavier, better armed. The sane silence swallowed them whole. A technician monitoring global feeds stumbled on a bizarre pattern. Humanity wasn't broadcasting distress. They were broadcasting everything else. Music. Laughter, arguments, late-night comedy shows. Old war documentaries. Voices reciting poetry. None of it encrypted. None of it aimed skyward. It was as if Earth didn't care that they were being watched, or worse, they wanted to be. The Admiral ordered a hard probe orbital scans at maximum penetration. They barely got through the upper crust before systems fried. Geological readings. Reported inconsistencies, metal deposits shaped in perfect symmetry beneath hundreds of cities. Artificial, but ancient. Defensive architecture too primitive for the Dominion to take seriously, yet too effective to ignore. Nothing adds up. The Data commander admitted. They have no shields, no plasma barriers, no recognized power cores, and yet we're blind. A junior officer patched in audio from an intercepted broadcast. It was a human voice, rough and unpolished, telling a story. Something about surviving. In a desert during a war. No tactics, no galactic insight. Just a man remembering pain, heat, loss. The Admiral scoffed. Sentiment. Then came the second message from Earth. It didn't ride any known frequency. It didn't target the ships. It arrived inside the minds of the fleet's crew, clear and undeniable. We've survived everything. You're just next on the list. Terror spread quietly, not through orders. Not through weapons, through glances, through silence. Veteran. Officers who had subjugated 5 systems now stared at Earth as if it had teeth. Another ship was lost, this time mid-orbit. No weapons fire. No explosion. Just gone. The ship's last transmission was 3 words, whispered. They're not human. The command council convened. The science officer proposed a theory. Earth had developed independently, without external contact, and had turned inward. Everything on the surface was crude wires, metal, concrete, but beneath it was something else. Something the Dominion didn't understand. A decision was made to activate Ghost World Override. Prepare for forced compliance. Atmospheric strikes, psychological destabilization, memory fragmentation if needed. A standard procedure for non-compliant worlds, but before they could initiate, the static returned, stronger this time. Not on comms, but inside the ship's systems, screens flickered. Lights pulsed in rhythm with human heartbeats. Then another voice. You left us alone. And that was your first mistake. A low-ranking communication officer collapsed, clutching his head. He screamed about fire raining from the sky, though there was none. He saw mushroom clouds that didn't exist. His mind filled with events from Earth's past that he never lived. Images from human wars, atrocities, disasters. Not recordings, memories. Injected. Raw. One after another, Zoroth crew members began to whisper human names. Not alien approximations, but perfect pronunciations of forgotten soldiers, victims, survivors. Names the Dominion never taught, never studied, yet now haunted them. A senior navigator turned off his console and spoke without emotion. They're not transmitting data. They're transmitting trauma. The Admiral barked for answers, but there were none. Earth had no fleet in orbit, no launch signatures, no heat trails, no gravitational anomalies. And yet, one by one, the Dominion's most advanced ships were going dark not by attack, but by choice. Crews self-terminating. Commanders locking themselves in and screaming about being buried alive. The final act of defiance came from Earth itself. Every major city activated power grids not connected to any known energy source. Buildings pulsed with light. Audio poured into space. Children laughing. People crying. The sound of a heartbeat overlaid with gunfire. Then silence. Nothing moved. Nothing answered. Until one last message echoed inside every Zoroth mind aboard the fleet. We don't fear death. We catalog it, learn from it, and when it returns we recognize its face. You wore it today. The Admiral, once assured of conquest, stared at the blue sphere below and felt something foreign. Not defeat, but irrelevance. They hadn't come to reclaim a lost colony. They'd trespassed into the territory of survivors who had been forged in fire without alien intervention, without outside protection. Earth hadn't become a galactic civilization. It had become something worse. Something untouchable. And the Zoroth weren't ready. Panic had no place in Zoroth doctrine, yet it had begun to spread like infection. Not through combat losses or strategic setbacks. There had been no battle. No weapons had fired. No enemies had been seen. And still, 4 scout teams had vanished. Surveillance feeds had blacked out. Recon drones fell like dead insects. Officers were whispering. Crews hesitated before orders. The fleet, once a machine of conquest, now stood eerily still. The Dominion initiated Ghost World Protocol. It was not designed for resistance. It was designed for mystery. For planets that felt too quiet, for when silence felt staged. It authorized overwhelming force, memory suppression tech, mind erasure, and if needed, cultural annihilation. But Earth resisted none of it. Instead, it responded with its own silence, weaponized, intelligent, deliberate. They deployed automated probes into the upper atmosphere. Each one failed differently. One exploded. One drifted endlessly with no power loss but no signal. One returned data in a spiral of encoded human numbers, the digits of pi endlessly looping. They tried a deeper scan beneath the Atlantic Ocean. The sonar bounced back an answer in Morse code. We see you. There were no missiles, no energy surges. But their ships were breaking down, one by one. Power loss, hallucinations, crews reporting voices from within the ship. A pilot swore he saw a young girl standing on his bridge. When he blinked, she was gone, but her footprints remained. Cold, wet, human footprints. The Dominion Psychology Unit assembled a theory. Earth had built no defenses because Earth had become the defense. The entire planet, through some evolution or design, functioned as a cognitive weapon. Not overtly hostile, but reactive. It wasn't attacking them, it was reflecting them back to themselves. The commander dismissed the idea. But even as he spoke, another ship cut all communications and fled the orbit line. A mutiny, the first in Zorith fleet history in 1,000 years. Its last broadcast before vanishing into hyperspace. There is something in the sky that watches. Not machines. Not gods. Just people. People who've buried 1,000 Earths already. Back in orbit, a ghost transmission flooded every Dominion frequency. Audio only. A human child singing something ancient, something aching. The voice was fragile, cracked, then it melted into static, and behind it, breathing. Human breathing. Rhythmic, unyielding. They traced the source to a satellite they hadn't seen before. It wasn't military, it wasn't even modern. It was old, crude, bronze plaques, analog feed. It was Voyager 1, still drifting, still alive. And somehow it had turned to face them. The scientists tried to rationalize it, but there was nothing. Rational left. Earth was not behaving as a primitive world. It was behaving like a trap. And more disturbingly, it was not luring them in. It was waiting for them to leave. A decision was made. Land a full battalion, heavy exo-armor, mech support. Psychological dampeners. They deployed in Germany, what humans once called Berlin. As soon as they touched ground, all contact ceased. The feed didn't cut, it melted. Screens bled images, children standing in rows, men digging trenches, smoke rising. Not in real time. In memory, a low-ranking officer began reciting numbers. His voice monotone, 6 million, 20 million, 100 million. Numbers of human dead across centuries. Numbers etched into the very soil. He had never studied human history. None of them had. And yet the numbers flowed as if he'd always known. Then came the storm. Not wind, not rain. It was sound. Distant, crawling sound, like boots. Thousands of boots marching in perfect rhythm. No source, no origin, just presence. Ships trembled, not from impact, but from memory. From inherited fear. Back aboard the command ship, a new signal emerged. A podcast. Human voice, slow and deliberate, telling a story of a war that never reached the stars. Vietnam. It described tunnels, mud, endless rain, and the feeling of never knowing where the enemy was. The commander screamed for it to be shut off, but no system responded. The voice continued, seamless, unshaken. Then the human spoke clearly, over all Dominion channels. We did not evolve like you. We did not unify under logic. We learned by bleeding. We taught our children pain, and they taught it back. You want to conquer us? Which version? The one buried in trenches? The one who burned cities? Or the one who learned to smile through it all? It wasn't defiance, it was declaration. There was no bluff in the tone. It was pure fact, one Dominion. Soldier, a veteran of 12 campaigns, collapsed in his chamber and clawed at his own face. He whispered, "They know my name. They knew it before I was born." He died of cardiac arrest. No poison, no weapon. Just fear. They sent more drones. One hovered above New York. It captured a skyline, glowing in the night. People moving as if nothing was wrong. Then every building's lights blinked once, perfect unison. A message in binary. We remember. The Admiral demanded a strike. Fire something, anything. Prove that this was a physical world, not some illusion. A plasma shot was authorized. Targeting an empty field. It hit nothing. The energy vanished mid-air. The field bloomed with thousands of red flowers an hour later. Their pattern? Morse code again. Wrong move. Systems began to stutter. Ships drifted from position. Language programs reset to English. One officer looked at his console and saw his own face staring back at him, aged, broken, human. The Zoroth had always believed themselves superior because they had erased their past. Erased failure, erased emotion. They now faced a species that remembered everything, not as weakness, but as strength. The humans didn't hide from pain. They became it, shaped it into something unkillable. The Admiral issued a command to retreat. No. Ship moved. One final voice emerged from the static. Male, older, calm. You're not fighting a planet. You're fighting everyone we've ever buried. And the fleet understood. Earth was not defending itself, it was haunting them. One of the few remaining clear signals came from a lone observation pod above the Indian Ocean. It wasn't meant for warfare, only scientific monitoring. Its systems hadn't yet been infected with fear, and its I hadn't been touched by the strange psychic static crawling through the fleet. The pod sent back a final analysis, an anomaly, buried 2 kilometers beneath the Tibetan plateau. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a facility. It was a library. The Admiral ordered a forced excavation using orbital drills. The moment energy. Beams reached the crust. They failed. Instruments reversed. Feed monitors turned black, then white, then black again. Then the crew aboard the drilling ship began to weep. No command. No explanation. Trained Zoroth warriors dropped to their knees, sobbing in silence, unable to look away from the Earth's surface. One lieutenant spoke aloud what all of them saw in their minds. A girl, maybe 12, holding a broken violin in the middle of rubble. She was not real, yet they saw her, heard the noteless sound. And behind her were silhouettes, millions watching, waiting. It became clear. Humanity had not developed mind-based weapons. Humanity was the weapon. The human mind had become something the Dominion couldn't quantify. It did not resist invasion with shields or lasers. It resisted with history, with collective grief, with memory layered so thick over centuries of suffering that the very planet had become a psychological battlefield. Another ship failed, this time the medical frigate. Every life form aboard stopped breathing at the same second. No violence, no pressure drop, just stillness. In their place, the ship's walls became covered in frost, and on every surface appeared the words, "This is our home." You don't understand what that means. The Dominion's AI tried to isolate the frequency, but the messages came not in waves, but in feelings, smell, taste, temperature, memory. One officer described the scent of burning oil and old leather boots, despite no such objects existing on the ship. Another swore she heard the ticking of a wall clock from 1943. Time itself was bleeding. Still, the Admiral, pressed by pride and protocol, sent out an assault command. 10 dropships launched toward different regions: Moscow, Cairo, Tokyo, Johannesburg, Sao Paulo, Los Angeles, Sydney, New Delhi, London, and Chicago. None landed. Instead, each entered the stratosphere, received false data, changed course, and vanished, reappearing on the other side of the planet. Engines cooled, crew unconscious or insane. One pilot woke up screaming in flawless English. They buried their wars and left the ghosts behind. The Science Division proposed an answer, desperate for explanation. Earth's neural culture had advanced beyond technology. It wasn't evolution. It was compounding. Like sediment-forming rock, every century of humanity had pressed its fears, triumphs, and rage into the fabric of the species. They did not ascend. They anchored, deeper, heavier, until their minds became unassailable fortresses of experience. But Earth had done more than just remember. It had weaponized reflection. Every attempt to strike was met not with retaliation, but with memory. The fleet was being shown pieces of Earth's truth, not as threats, but as answers. Why the humans had never needed to fight in orbit. Why they hadn't responded to diplomacy. Why they weren't asking for mercy. They weren't afraid because they had nothing left to fear. A signal returned to the command ship, this time from their own archives. Encrypted. Dominion protocol. Not Earth's doing, yet it played a human voice, one long dead, when they had never recorded. It was the voice of a man describing firebombs over his home. His child's hand gone limp, his resolve to stand anyway. The voice spoke of rebuilding, of burying pain and building schools on top of the ashes. Then silence, then one final phrase. We are not your lost children. We are your mirror. At that moment, a new reading surged through the fleet. Earth had launched nothing. And yet, every ship's hull began to crack subtly but uniformly. Not from outside force, but from within. Stress factors aligned with psychological markers. Ship AI interfaces turned to display the faces of the crew's dead, not humans. Their own species. Their own buried regrets. Earth wasn't showing only its own past, it was digging into the minds of its enemies. A pilot whispered, "They're not just remembering themselves, they're making us remember too." And that was the final turning point. The Dominion was not made for self-reflection. Its strength was in purging history, discarding failure. But Earth made forgetting impossible. Every soul aboard every ship was being dragged into a confrontation, not with a hostile race, but with their own denied horrors filtered through the lens of a species that had lived with it all, and never flinched. The commander of the tactical corps attempted to destroy his own ship, but the system responded with one word: observed. And it all made sense. Earth was not defending itself. In traditional terms, it was studying, not to counter, but to understand. And in that understanding, it disarmed every enemy before a trigger could be pulled. Because against a species that had watched its own skies rain fire, buried its children, rebuilt empires, and walked back into the darkness again and again, there was no weapon left to use. The Zoroth, after countless campaigns of control, had met an opponent who could not be broken, because the humans had already broken themselves, and put themselves back together in ways no conqueror could comprehend. The Dominion's fleets had not been defeated, they had been dismissed. Ships that had once loomed like gods now drifted like forgotten bones above the blue world. Systems were intact, hulls still strong, but inside, silence had taken hold. Not the tactical kind, not the kind that listens, but the silence of surrender. The kind you find in ancient ruins, places too heavy with meaning to speak within. The Dominion Council sent a final encrypted command: detonate the fleet's core. Destroy everything. Leave nothing behind for the humans to study. But no hand moved. No officer reached for the override. The chain of command had broken, not in defiance, but in recognition. They understood now. Earth didn't need to kill them. It just needed them to see. And that was worse. A single scout vessel, older than most, powered up its engines in secret and disengaged from formation. It turned away from Earth's gravity well and limped into deep space. It sent no report. The humans let it go. The only message in its log: we do not belong here. On Earth, life continued as if nothing had happened. No alarm, no retaliation. Children played. Factories hummed. A wedding was held in a park in Rome. A protest marched in Chicago. A street vendor in Lagos sold roasted maize under warm sun. Humanity did not rise to meet the threat. It simply kept living, like it always had. That, more than anything, was the final act of resistance. Above, in orbit, one Dominion officer, Kareth, son of the Turan cluster, sat on the floor of his command deck, staring at an old photograph found in the data stream Earth had sent. It showed two humans, one young, one old. The caption read, "He fought so I could learn." There were no weapons in the image. No victory parade. Just legacy. Kareth did something no Dominion had done in generations. He cried. The tears weren't grief or fear, they were understanding. For the first time in his life, he felt small, not because he was weak, but because he stood at the edge of something vaster than conquest could contain. A civilization that had climbed out of its own extinction again and again, never asking to be spared, only to be remembered. The last functioning battleship finally made contact with Earth. No weapons. No demands. A transmission. "Why do you not strike us?" Earth responded instantly. Text only. "You were never the enemy. Fear was." Kareth saw his reflection in the blank console. Not as a soldier, but as a child who had once asked his mother what stars were made of. He had grown in a world where questions like that were forbidden. But Earth had raised billions who asked it every night. And in that moment, he understood humanity's true weapon. Curiosity. Not the kind that just seeks. The kind that refuses to stop seeking, even when surrounded by death. The kind that keeps digging after its own tragedies, not to forget, but to grow, to turn wounds into blueprints, to build cathedrals from the ruins, the fleet, or what was left of it, powered down, a unanimous decision. No vote. No orders, only shared clarity. The Dominion had mastered fear. But Earth had befriended it. Later, Earth would detect a single Dominion satellite left behind. Not a threat, a marker. It drifted silently, carrying only one file, a recording of a human woman, reciting poetry over the sound of rain. It was titled, "We Learned Too Late." And Earth? Earth did not celebrate. It simply waited. Because it knew, in the dark between stars, others were watching, and it wanted them to understand. This planet was not protected by fleets or machines. It was protected by memory. Every grave was a shield, every story, a sword. And those who came to reclaim it, came to learn the only lesson Earth had left to teach. We are not here because we are the strongest. We are here because we are the ones who never stopped coming back.